The morning light filtered through the hand-painted silk screens of the golden crane, casting delicate shadows across tables that had witnessed thousands of stories. Marcus Chen moved through his restaurant with the practiced grace of a man who knew every creak in the floorboards, every whisper of the kitchen's rhythm. His weathered hands arranged fresh orchids in vases, a ritual his mother had started 30 years ago in Hong Kong, one he'd carried across oceans and time. "Morning, Mr. Chen," called out Harold, an elderly regular who'd been coming here since the day Marcus opened 15 years ago. Harold's granddaughter Sophie sat beside him, her university textbook spread across the worn wooden table. This was their Thursday tradition: dim sum and differential equations, a grandfather's love served alongside perfectly steamed har gow. Marcus smiled, the kind that reached his tired eyes. "The usual, Harold? And extra prawn toast for our future engineer?" The warmth in his voice carried the weight of genuine care. This wasn't just business, it was family woven together by bamboo steamers and jasmine tea. In the kitchen, his daughter Emma, 22 and fresh from culinary school, worked alongside Wei, the head chef who'd followed Marcus from his first failing venture to this success. "Dad, the new supplier sent the wrong cut of pork again," Emma said, frustration creeping into her voice. "Then we adapt," Marcus replied, his tone steady as a heartbeat. "Your grandmother once made a feast from 3 eggs and yesterday's rice during the tough times. We honor the ingredients we have, not the ones we wish for." The restaurant hummed with quiet contentment. At table 7, the Morrison family celebrated their son's acceptance to medical school. By the window, Mrs. Patel worked on her novel. Same table, same green tea, every morning for 3 years. The golden crane wasn't just serving food, it was holding space for life to unfold. Marcus paused by the photo wall. Images spanning decades showed wedding proposals, birthday celebrations, first dates that became golden anniversaries. His fingers traced the frame of his favorite, his mother, tiny and fierce, teaching a young Marcus to fold dumplings. "Food is love made visible," she'd always said. Never forget that. As the lunch rush approached, Marcus gathered his small team. "Remember," he said, his voice carrying quiet authority, "we're not just feeding bodies, we're nourishing souls. Every dish that leaves this kitchen carries our story." None of them could have imagined that within hours, someone would try to rewrite that story entirely, turning their sanctuary into a stage for hollow performance. The disruption arrived at 2:47 p.m., precise as a digital timestamp, chaotic as a storm. Chloe Winters swept through the doors of the Golden Crane like she owned the air itself, her entourage of 3, a cameraman, a lighting assistant, and what appeared to be a personal stylist, transforming the peaceful ambience into a production set without asking permission. "Oh my God, this is perfect. So authentic, so vintage," Chloe exclaimed, her voice pitched for performance rather than conversation. Her blonde hair caught the light as she spun, already framing shots with her fingers. "Jake, get the ring light over here. This lighting is absolutely tragic for my skin tone." Marcus emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron, watching as this young woman, she couldn't be older than Emma, began rearranging tables that had been deliberately placed to honor feng shui principles his mother had taught him. "Excuse me, miss, can I help you?" His voice remained calm, professional. Chloe barely glanced at him. "We'll need that corner table cleared. I'm doing a mukbang series on hidden gems, and your little place is going to be episode 12. She thrust a business card at him without looking. 2.3 million followers. The exposure I'm about to give you is worth thousands in advertising." Mrs. Patel looked up from her novel, distress evident in her eyes. The corner table Chloe wanted was her sanctuary, her writing haven. Marcus saw her gathering her things, preparing to leave rather than confront the situation. "That table is occupied," Marcus said firmly, moving to block Chloe's path, "and we'd appreciate if you'd ask before filming our guests." Chloe finally looked at him properly, her eyes scanning his simple attire, the grey threading through his black hair, the calluses on his hands. Her smile was practiced, condescending. "Listen, I get it. You probably don't understand how social media works, but trust me, after I post about this place, you'll be booked solid for months." Emma watched from the kitchen doorway, her jaw clenched. She pulled out her phone, quietly beginning to record the interaction. Something in her father's posture, the way his shoulders set, the careful control in his breathing, told her this was important. "We're already booked solid," Marcus replied, his accent, usually soft, becoming more pronounced with emotion. "By people who respect what we've built here." Chloe laughed, a tinkling sound devoid of warmth. "Respect doesn't pay the bills, Mr. Chen, Marcus Chen. I own this restaurant." "Well, Mr. Chen, you're about to learn how the modern world works." She snapped her fingers at Jake. "Start rolling. We'll do the entrance again, but this time I want genuine surprise on my face." As Chloe repositioned herself outside to film her spontaneous discovery of the golden crane, Marcus returned to Mrs. Patel's table. "Please don't leave," he said softly. "Your chapter isn't finished yet, is it?" Mrs. Patel's eyes glistened. "No, but then stay. This is your table. Some things aren't for sale, not even for 2.3 million followers." 3 days passed before Chloe returned, but her digital presence had already begun its assault. Her Instagram stories featured the golden crane, but filtered through her lens of casual cruelty. "Cute little ethnic spot, needs major updating. The owner is giving grumpy grandpa vibes, definitely potential here if they modernized." This time she brought 20 of her followers, young people who spoke in hashtags and viewed life through phone screens. They descended upon the restaurant during the Friday lunch rush, their presence like a swarm of locusts disguised in designer clothing. "Mr. Chen," Chloe called out with false familiarity, cameras already rolling. "I brought friends. You should thank me. Look at all this business." But it wasn't business. It was chaos. They demanded special off-menu items for their content, sent back perfectly good dishes for better lighting angles, and treated Wei's carefully crafted dim sum like props in their personal theater. Emma watched her father's face as a girl barely out of her teens called the Ha Gao basic while posing with it for a boomerang video. Harold arrived for his regular Friday lunch with Sophie, but found no seats available. The disappointment in his eyes as he turned to leave struck Marcus deeper than any negative review ever could. This was Harold, who'd celebrated his wife's remission here, who'd mourned her passing at that same corner table, who brought his granddaughter here to show her that some things in life remained constant and good. "Enough," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the chatter. But Chloe was live streaming now, hundreds of viewers watching in real time. "Oh my God, guys, the owner is having a moment," she narrated to her phone. "This is pure content gold." She turned the camera on Marcus's face, zooming in on his frustration. "Sir, would you like to say hi to my followers? Maybe apologize for the slow service?" Emma stepped forward, but her father raised a hand, stopping her. His eyes had changed, something ancient and powerful stirring behind them. The same look his mother had when she'd faced down creditors trying to destroy their first family restaurant. "Your followers," Marcus said slowly, each word deliberate, "are watching you disrespect a place where marriage proposals have been accepted, where families have reunited after decades apart, where people have found comfort in their darkest hours. This isn't content. These are lives you're trampling." Chloe's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. "Drama. You guys are witnessing authentic local flavor." But some of her followers had stopped filming, actually looking around the restaurant for the first time, at the photos on the walls, at Wei's exhausted face, at Emma's barely contained anger. One young man put down his phone. "This is actually messed up, Chloe," he said quietly. But Chloe was already spinning the narrative. "Guys, I'm literally being attacked for trying to support a small business." That evening, after the chaos subsided, Marcus sat with Emma in the empty restaurant. "She's going to ruin us," Emma said, showing him the online comments beginning to pile up, some supporting Chloe, others defending the restaurant, creating a digital war with the golden crane as its battlefield. Marcus studied his daughter's face, saw his own fire reflected in her eyes, tempered with her mother's wisdom. "No," he said finally. "She's going to teach us something. and we're going to teach her something in return. The War Council convened at dawn, not lawyers or publicists, but the true guardians of the Golden Crane. Wei arrived first, followed by Mrs. Patel, Harold with Sophie, the Morrison family, and a dozen other regulars who'd heard about the situation through the whispered network of loyalty that connected them. "She's planning something bigger," Emma reported, showing them Chloe's latest posts. "A secret supper club takeover this Saturday. She's selling tickets, £50 each, for an exclusive dining experience at our restaurant." "But we never agreed to this," Wei protested, his usual calm shattered. "She doesn't care," Sophie said, looking up from her laptop. "I've done some research. She's done this before. Barcelona, Prague, Tokyo, small family restaurants that can't afford legal battles. She makes her content, destroys their peace, and moves on." Marcus stood at the head of the table, but this wasn't about leadership. It was about community. "What she doesn't understand," he said softly, "is that the Golden Crane isn't mine alone. It belongs to all of you. Every memory you've made here, every celebration, every quiet morning with tea and silence, you've built this place as much as I have." "So what do we do?" Harold asked, his voice carrying the weight of his 78 years. Marcus smiled then, the kind of smile his mother wore when she knew the rice was perfect before opening the pot. "We give her exactly what she wants, a show, but not the one she expects." Over the next 3 days, they prepared. Not with anger or vengeance, but with the careful precision of people who understood that dignity was its own form of rebellion. Mrs. Patel wrote scripts. Sophie created a digital strategy. The Morrison family, both lawyers, provided legal framework. Wei and Emma crafted a special menu, not for Chloe's guests, but for something else entirely. Emma spent hours editing footage she'd been quietly gathering, not just of Chloe's behavior, but of the restaurant's real story. Harold sharing tea with his late wife's photo on her birthday. The Lee family's son taking his first steps between tables. Marcus teaching a struggling culinary student the 17 folds of the perfect dumpling, charging nothing but promising to pass on the knowledge. "We're not trying to destroy her," Marcus reminded them as Saturday approached. "We're trying to show her what she's been too blind to see." But it was Mrs. Patel who understood the deeper strategy. "Stories," she said, adjusting her glasses, "have power only when they're true. She's been telling a false story about us, so we'll tell the true story about everything, including her." The plan was elegant in its simplicity, devastating in its compassion. They wouldn't fight Chloe's digital world with its own weapons. They'd invite her into theirs, the analog world of human connection, where followers meant people who actually followed you home to make sure you were safe, where likes were the sound of laughter over shared meals, where influence was measured in lives touched, not metrics reached. Saturday arrived grey and drizzling, perfect weather for what would later be called the reckoning of the Golden Crane, though Marcus would never call it that. To him, it was simply the day they chose to stop being victims in someone else's story. Saturday evening descended upon the Golden Crane with the weight of destiny. By 6 o'clock, Chloe's ticketed guests began arriving, 50 souls who'd paid premium prices to witness what she'd marketed as the ultimate authentic experience takeover. They entered with phones raised like shields, ready to capture every moment for their digital kingdoms. Unaware, they were about to witness something that no camera could truly capture. Chloe made her entrance last, deliberate as theater, wearing a dress that shimmered like false promises. Her smile blazed artificial bright as she addressed her live stream audience, now swelling past thousands. "Welcome to my special evening at the Golden Crane," she proclaimed, her voice carrying the hollow ring of practiced enthusiasm. "Tonight, you'll see how Chloe Winters transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary." Marcus stood behind his counter like an ancient tree, rooted, unshakable, watching the storm approach with the wisdom of someone who'd weathered worse. Emma's subtle nod told him everything was ready. The regulars had arrived early, each one a guardian of truth, seated at their familiar tables, prepared to reveal what real influence looked like. Mr. Chen, Chloe sang out with synthetic sweetness, I hope you've prepared something special for my guests. They've paid good money for this experience. Indeed they have, Marcus replied, his voice carrying the depth of ocean tides. And experiences are exactly what we serve here. Wei, please begin. What unfolded next would ripple through the digital world like drops of truth in an ocean of artifice. As Chloe's guests anticipated exclusive delicacies, Wei and Emma began serving the regular menu. But with each dish came something priceless, stories that transformed food into sacrament. Harold rose first, his weathered hands trembling slightly as they touched his usual hagao. This exact dish, he began, his voice cracking like old leather with emotion, was the last meal my Mary ate before the cancer claimed her. She said the shrimp was sweet as our first kiss, 47 years before. Mr. Chen sat with us that day, held her hand while she took that final bite. He closed the restaurant early so she could hear her favorite song one more time in the place where we'd celebrated every anniversary. The room shifted, phones lowering like flags at half-mast. Someone gasped softly. The live stream comments began flooding in, but no one was reading them anymore. Mrs. Patel stood next, her sari rustling like whispered prayers. Chapter 12 of my novel, the one that just won the Booker Prize. I wrote it at that corner table after my divorce. I thought I had no stories left to tell, no words worth writing. Marcus brought me tea, different kinds each day, and said, empty cups can be filled again. For 3 years, he never charged me for the tea. When I tried to pay after my book deal, he said, you already paid us, with hope. Every morning you came back was proof that tomorrow could be better than yesterday. The testimonies continued, each one a thread in the tapestry of the Golden Crane's true story. The Morrison boy spoke through tears about celebrating his medical school acceptance here after failing the previous year, how Marcus had taped his rejection letters to the kitchen wall with the sign, fertilizer for future success. Sophie's voice broke as she described her grandfather bringing her here after her parents' accident, how the ritual of Thursday dim sum became her anchor in a world suddenly unmoored. Chloe's carefully constructed evening was dissolving like sugar in rain. Her paying guests had stopped filming entirely. Several were openly weeping. One young man removed his designer sunglasses to wipe his eyes, seeing clearly for perhaps the first time. But Chloe, desperate to maintain control, turned to her live stream with practiced defiance. This is manipulative, she declared, her voice climbing toward hysteria. They're obviously plants, paid actors trying to sabotage. I have something to show you, Emma interrupted, her voice steady as her father's. The projector illuminated the white wall they'd kept clear, and suddenly the truth played out in undeniable clarity. The footage showed everything. Chloe's dismissive entrance, her cruel comments, her followers' casual disrespect, but most importantly, it showed Marcus's response, dignified, patient, never rising to anger, even as she tried to destroy what he'd built. Then came the other footage. Marcus staying past midnight, teaching struggling culinary students, charging nothing but their promise to pass on the knowledge. By personally delivering food to the homeless shelter every evening, always the best portions, never the leftovers. The restaurant transformed every Sunday morning into a grief support group, widowers and widows finding solace in shared silence and warm tea. The live stream viewer count exploded, 100,000, 200,000, climbing like a fever, but they weren't watching Chloe anymore. They were witnessing something extraordinary, the moment when performance met truth and crumbled in its presence. The atmosphere in the Golden Crane transformed completely, electric with the tension of truth confronting illusion. Chloe's live stream audience, now surpassing 500,000 viewers, watched in collective shock as her carefully manufactured persona shattered like porcelain against stone. The comments scrolled too fast to read, but the sentiment was clear. They were witnessing something unprecedented, raw, and necessary. You don't understand, Chloe said, her practiced voice dissolving into something younger, more frightened. Her hand shook as she gripped her phone like a lifeline to a world that was rapidly rejecting her. This is how everything works now. Attention is currency. Influence is power. I'm giving you visibility. I'm making you matter. Marcus moved toward her with the careful grace of someone approaching a wounded creature. His eyes held no anger, only a profound sadness for what she'd become. Visibility? He asked, his voice gentle enough to break hearts. We've been visible to everyone who matters for 15 years. You mistake being seen for being known, being watched for being loved. There's a difference between mattering to millions who don't know your name and mattering to dozens who'd notice if you didn't show up tomorrow. One of Chloe's paying guests, a young woman named Rebecca, suddenly stood. Her designer bag dropped forgotten to the floor as she spoke. "I want my money back," she said, then paused, her voice softening. "Actually, no. Keep it. This isn't what I came for, but I'm glad I'm here." She turned to Marcus with tears streaming down her face. "Sir, could I stay? Not for content, not for Instagram, just to have dinner, real dinner. I haven't had a meal without photographing it in 3 years." The dam broke. Others began voicing similar sentiments. Phones disappeared into pockets and bags like shameful secrets. The transformation was palpable. 50 people who'd arrived as an audience were becoming participants in something authentic. Chloe watched her curated event dissolve into something beyond her control, genuine human connection. Emma stepped forward with the final piece of evidence. "This is from yesterday," she announced, projecting it clearly. The footage showed Chloe at another restaurant, laughing with her team, her voice dripping contempt. "That pathetic old man actually thinks his little dumpling shop matters. After tomorrow night, he'll be begging me for more exposure. These people don't understand. Relevance is something I grant, not something they earn." The live stream erupted. Chloe's follower count, the number she'd built her entire identity around, began hemorrhaging. 2.3 million, 2.2, 2.0, 1.8, the digits falling like autumn leaves. Each lost follower felt like a piece of her carefully constructed self dying. Her face went pale, then red, cycling through emotions like a broken traffic light. "Stop!" she whispered, barely audible, then screamed, "Stop! This isn't fair. I made you relevant. I made you matter. Without me, you're nothing." Marcus approached her slowly, each step measured and deliberate. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of every struggle he'd survived, every sacrifice he'd made to build this sanctuary. "No, child," he said, and the tenderness in that word, child, seemed to break something in her. "You made us visible to people who don't truly see. We were already relevant to those who do. The sun doesn't need Instagram to announce the dawn. It simply rises, and those who need light look up." Wei emerged from the kitchen carrying something unexpected. Not an elaborate dish, but a simple bowl of congee, the kind mothers make for sick children, comfort food in its purest form. He placed it before Chloe with ceremonial care. "When I first came to this country," he said, his accent thick with emotion, "I was angry. Angry at being invisible, at being dismissed. Then Mr. Chen's mother taught me something. Those who shout loudest often have nothing to say. Those who whisper truth will always find ears that need to hear it." Chloe stared at the congee. Simple, unglamorous, unphotogenic, and for perhaps the first time in years saw food as nourishment rather than content. Her carefully applied makeup began to run as tears fell freely, dropping onto the worn wooden table where Harold's wife had taken her last meal, where Mrs. Patel had rediscovered her voice, where countless lives had intersected in quiet significance. "I don't know how to be real anymore," she admitted, her voice breaking completely. The admission wasn't for the live stream. She'd forgotten it was still running, forgotten the hundreds of thousands watching. It was for herself, for the room, for the truth that demanded its moment. "I don't remember who I was before the followers, before the likes. I don't know if that person even exists anymore." Marcus sat beside her, not across as an adversary, but beside her as a fellow human who understood losing yourself. "Real is the easiest thing in the world," he said, placing a weathered hand over hers. "You simply stop performing and start being. The hardest part isn't learning how, it's believing you're worth loving without the show. 6 months later, the Golden Crane hosted another gathering, Harold's 80th birthday. The restaurant hummed with the kind of joy that couldn't be manufactured or staged, the walls themselves seeming to exhale contentment. A new photo had joined the collection on the wall, small and unassuming. It showed the night everything changed, but Marcus hadn't placed it prominently. The best stories, he believed, didn't need spotlights. They glowed with their own light. Chloe arrived early, barely recognizable from the woman who'd first swept through these doors like a conquering army. Gone were the designer clothes, the perfect makeup, the armor of artifice. She wore a simple apron, flour dusting her hands from the morning's work. Every Saturday for 3 months, she'd been learning from Wei, not how to make food photogenic, but how to make it carry love. The carrots must be thinner, Wei instructed with infinite patience, watching her work. Think of them as golden threads connecting one heart to another. Food is a language, child. Learn to speak it truthfully. She'd lost almost everything that night 6 months ago, dropping from millions to barely 30,000 followers. But something miraculous had happened. The ones who stayed were different. They didn't want performance. They craved authenticity. Her new content, sparse and unfiltered, showed her journey back to humanity. Burning dishes, crying over failed dumplings, the slow triumph of finally getting the 17 folds right. No scripts, no editing, just the messy, beautiful process of becoming real again. "Mr. Chen," she said during a quiet moment, finding him arranging his daily orchids, "I've been thinking about what you said, about shadows and light." Marcus paused, giving her the gift he gave everyone, complete presence. It was this quality she'd been desperately trying to learn, how to truly see others instead of constantly curating how she was seen. "I spent so long being the shadow," she continued, her voice steady now with hard-won wisdom, "that I forgot I could create light too. I thought influence meant making people watch me. You taught me it means helping them see themselves." Emma emerged, carrying Harold's birthday cake. Nothing elaborate, certainly not Instagram-worthy, just his favorite recipe, the same one his late wife used to make. As the small gathering sang "Happy Birthday," voices imperfect but sincere, Chloe found herself fully present for perhaps the first time in years, not documenting, not performing, just being part of something that mattered precisely because it wouldn't be shared with strangers. Mrs. Patel had finished her second novel, written entirely at her corner table. The Morrison boy was thriving in medical school, returning every break to volunteer at the restaurant's new community dinners. Sophie had started teaching mathematics to underprivileged children in the back room every Tuesday. Marcus never charged for the space, saying knowledge shared was rent enough. "You know what's remarkable?" Chloe confided to Emma as they cleared plates together, their movements synchronized like dance partners. "I have more actual influence now with 30,000 real people than I ever had with 2 million strangers. Those millions were just numbers. These thousands, they write to me about their struggles, their triumphs. We're actually connected." Emma smiled, wisdom beyond her years shining through. "My grandmother used to say that influence isn't measured by how many people hear you speak, but by whether anyone truly listens. And more importantly, whether you listen back." As evening melted into night, Harold pulled Marcus aside, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "You know what you did, don't you? Not just for her, but for all of us." Marcus shook his head humbly. "I just protected what mattered." "No," Harold insisted, gripping Marcus's shoulder with surprising strength. "You showed us that in a world obsessed with being seen, the bravest thing might be to truly see others. You didn't just save your restaurant, you saved that girl's soul." Later, in the quiet sanctuary of his empty restaurant, Marcus stood among the shadows cast by silk screens, surrounded by the gentle ghosts of 15 years of memories. His phone buzzed, a message from Chloe. The photo showed her own family dinner. No staging, no filters, just people around a table sharing food she'd learned to make here. Her parents, whom she hadn't spoken to in years while building her online empire, smiled with genuine pride. "Thank you," her message read, "for teaching me that the best stories aren't the ones we create for others to watch, but the ones we live when no one's looking. Thank you for showing me that the greatest influence is helping others find their own light. Thank you for saving me from myself." Marcus smiled and returned to his eternal ritual, arranging tomorrow's orchids, each placement an act of faith that beauty mattered even if no one photographed it. The golden crane would open its doors as it had for 15 years, ready to hold space for life's unscripted moments. The story that ultimately went viral wasn't about an influencer trying to steal spotlight. It became the legend of a humble restaurant owner who understood that real influence meant illuminating others, not yourself. The golden crane became more famous than Chloe could have ever made it, but for reasons she'd never anticipated. It became known as the place where authenticity defeated artifice, where community triumphed over content, where an old man's patience transformed a lost young woman's emptiness into purpose. But for Marcus Chen, it remained what it had always been, a sacred space where food was love made visible, where every dish served was a small prayer for connection, where shadows danced on silk screens while life, in all its imperfect beauty, unfolded one meal at a time. The story ends, not with fanfare but with continuity. The restaurant still opens each morning. Marcus still arranges his orchids with the same reverence. Wei still makes his dumplings with 17 perfect folds. And sometimes, on quiet afternoons when the light falls just right through those painted silk screens, you can find Chloe there, learning the most profound truth of all, that the greatest influence comes not from commanding attention, but from paying it. Not from being served, but from serving others. In the golden crane, every ending is just another beginning. Every meal a chance for transformation. Every table a stage for the only performance that matters. The authentic expression of human connection.